Hello, valued customers and listeners. Welcome back to this week's episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat with your host, Dylan Price.
And me, Hayden. Sorry, I was put off. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just, I take things to heart. And when last week you mentioned the fact that I've started every podcast with the exact same thing, I just thought, I'm going to freshen it up this week.
I'm going to be a robot. I'll just be a robotic voice, monotone. Yeah, that was good. It was great. I loved it.
Listen, if you're going to force me to break my habits of a lifetime, then you're going to have to put up with me thinking about every single syllable that I say out loud, okay?
Yeah, brilliant. So you removed the energy and thought, I'll just deliver it like this instead. Well, I think we should go back to the old one. I hate to admit it, Dylan, but I like the old one better.
Thank you. And again, people at home listening, they don't see every single week Hayden always comments because I do the same hand gestures as well. And when we're getting ready to go, we kind of line up our audio recordings. A lot of people have asked this, by the way. Do we record in the same room? A lot of people have asked me that, and we don't. We are recording this remotely. And
or do we?
Clearly. Yes. I don't know why we'd possibly lie about
that. No, we don't. Yeah, I've been asked the same question, by the way, quite a few people, and they've been shocked every time when I say, nope, different rooms.
Different rooms. Anyway. Most boring start to a podcast ever. Let's lighten it up, shall we? Let's go straight in. I know the viewers. I call them viewers. They don't watch. I guess they watch a reel every now and then. The listeners want to know, Hayden. They feel invested in your life. You better give them a really cool story. Nice. What's been going on this week?
That's nice. I like that. I mean, it's been a pretty bog standard week. However, there was one highlight that it's going to hopefully make you laugh. I was on duty, playground, and you're laughing already.
Oh, I thought that
wasn't the funny bit. No, that wasn't funny. That was more.
No. Sorry, I was laughing at you actually remembering to go out for duty. That's quite a funny thing.
Yeah, touche. Fair enough. I'll take that. So I was outside doing my usual, just scatting around, making sure everyone's getting on all right, get caught, stopping.
Sorry, why have you turned into a Cockney?
That's what I do outside, The kids respect that. They respect that.
The order of the Peaky Blinders. Like, now get off the jungle gym.
Yeah, he's coming. And they don't really. They just carry on doing anything like I'm not there. So I was at the back of the playground, just checking in on all the kids, rough and tumbling all over the place. And I sort of had to intervene. When you just get really close to kids to make them aware that to be like, come on, you need to stop doing what you're doing. But I'm not going to say anything. And one of them came up to me. I don't know this child. They're in a younger year group, obviously in your year group, and said to me, all right, Lord Goldilocks. Firstly, I was like, for God's sake, I was coming over here because they were messing around a little bit. I'm trying to put my stern face on, but then I was more annoyed that he got it wrong. So all I did was correct this child. I said, excuse me, but I did it with a dead stern face, right? So he really did not know how to react to it. So I don't think he actually processed the fact that I was joking. Dead stern face. Excuse me, that's Lord Voldemort to you. And he apologised for getting my name wrong as if it was my real name. He went, oh, sorry, I didn't realise it's Voldemort. Still wandered off. But I was like, that's brilliant. So thanks, Dylan, for.
I've trained them well. I wonder if other teachers this year have that same kind of phenomenon of the one place in everyone's playground where the kids seem to think they can get away with anything. Just proper rough and tumble. It's usually a corner, just out of the sight maybe of the people who are on duty. But there's always that one place, and you walk over there and there's 17 kids on top of each other just bundling, and it's just like, cool, stop that please. And oh, sorry, didn't realise we weren't allowed to do this thing that you tell us every single day we're not allowed to do.
And if you notice, another thing we tell them every single day not to do, and I reckon a lot of schools are like this. But we have like equipment at lunch times, but we don't really get equipment out of break times just because it can be a bit of a faff. So break times is just go and have fun, go and have a laugh, get a bit of fresh air. But one of our school rules is please don't take out a pair of gloves and start kicking it around as a football. Please don't take out a water bottle and start kicking it around as a football. Basically, please don't play football at break time. Every single week I'm out there, and I feel like is it just me? I have to remove something. Whether it's a Pringles lid or a piece of bark or like the most random things. This week it was a badge. A badge. These kids, I was like, they saw me coming in. They all start. That wasn't me. I wasn't playing. I wasn't actually playing. I was watching. It's like, yes, no, you were. Can you stop playing football with the badge?
I wonder if we could get our teacher friends who listen to this podcast to tell us the most random thing being used as a football, because they will find anything.
Anything.
They will use anything as a football. I've seen before a shoe. I've seen before a jumper. And I saw them try and fold it into a ball shape and kind of, tie the arms around each other. They kicked it once and it fell apart, and they kept trying to do it.
Can I tell you one of the funniest things that ever happened on the playground? And it's funny. Yeah. It's one of those funny things where you can laugh about it afterwards, but as a teacher in the moment, you had to not laugh, and it was so hard because it was actually funny.
We all know those ones.
It's terrible. It was naughty, but it was funny. And it was a shoe, right? The kids were playing football with a shoe. One of the kids just had one shoe on, and they were just running around, as you do. And obviously I went over, like, come on, no, don't do that. Like, don't play football with that. And I promise you this happened, right? This kid, this other child, it wasn't his shoe, picked up the shoe and just nonchalantly lobbed it onto the roof of the school. I was right there. I was right there. But he did it as if I'd walked off. Like I wasn't watching anymore. Yeah, all right. Just lobbed it onto, and I was like, what are you doing? And this other kid's like looking at his shoe, like, what? I couldn't believe it happened. It was absolutely hilarious, but not hilarious as well.
That reminds you of the episode of The Office when they lose the quiz and Finchy's there. He goes, "Oh, I bet I could throw your shoe over the roof."
Yeah.
That's the real quiz. And that's one of you for you guys out there who've watched The Office. If you haven't, ignore that last 20 seconds. But an excellent reference there.
That's not right, Dylan. If they haven't, go and watch it because it's a fantastic show. That's what you should have said. That's what you should have said.
It's the real quiz.
That's my week anyway. Digressed into other stories. Anything interesting from you?
I guess nothing like outlandish, quite a normal week, but there was one thing that happened that kind of did spark my memory of a previous discussion we had in the pod. And I remember it was one of the first weeks now, and we're just veterans at this. What are we at now? Episode 67, something like that. Right, yeah. One of the early episodes, we talked about winning and losing in primary school, and how there's this whole perception that in primary school maybe we're raising a bunch of, to quote the word I hate because it usually means people who care about things, snowflakes, like who can't lose, basically. Everyone's a winner kind of thing. And we talked about how that's not true. We do celebrate success. We also just take into account, that people have individual feelings. And if that makes us a snowflake, then I'm so sorry, guys. But the current unit I'm teaching for PE is outdoor adventure activities. And essentially what that is just the weather's improving. We go outside, we get the equipment out, and it's all team-based games. It's races, it's competition, it's team building. Think of classic team building when you go and build a raft. We can't build a raft, of course, but we can do those kind of games. The idea where they're forced to work with each other. And we know, don't we, how it's just such a pain for children to work in a group. Like it's a classic thing that as teachers we always talk about in parents' evenings, on reports. If you're a parent, you've seen it before. Works well on their own, works well in a group. And basically what had happened is we do some races, and we were split into teams of six or seven. There were group sizes of 5 children. Okay, so 5 children in a group, 4 or 5 children, and it was the classic, get across the river only using 2 mats, and you can only move a mat when everyone stood off of it, and you can only stand in this hoop, and you're stood in a circle holding hands, and you need to get a hoop around as fast as you can without unlinking. All that classic kind of things, which just force communication, right? So the first week I did it last week, I didn't give them any kind of talk. I just introduced them to the game, put them into teams, and observed them, and just to see how their team building was, working in groups. And whether they were good losers or bad losers, or throw a strop or have a paddy if they were losing. Now, of course, we know what it's like working with 8-year-olds.
You threw a paddy and they all lost.
I threw a paddy, I got really annoyed. There was a lot of falling out. And there was a lot of children over-celebrating the win, really going over the top and purposefully looking at children who they knew they could wind up and trying to just get to them. So then at the end of last week, I had a chat with them about actually, we've spoken about this before. There's always going to be a winner, but there's ways to win and there's ways to lose. And, you need to learn how to develop that. So this week we came along, I reminded them of that quickly, and they were so good. Honestly, so good. They were really encouraging their teammates. They were losing, but trying their hardest. And this is the point I made to them. Trying your hardest is more important than winning. It just is. And some people have a different outlook on that. But in terms of teaching a group of children, trying your absolute hardest, there's not much more than you can do at that point.
Yeah, if you try your hardest and lose, skill in life, isn't it? To be able to work hard at everything regardless of the outcome, right? That's a good thing to have.
And I always remember when I was younger, my mum always used to say that. And that actually did stick with me a lot, which was, look, as long as you've tried your hardest. And the reason she'd say it to me is because she knew full well that quite often I didn't try my hardest. And that's true, because I kind of coasted through doing stuff. But so these children were being really good at encouraging each other after a bit of an input, improving and all that. But I couldn't get over, and I shouldn't be surprised because it is the same every single year that I've been in this profession, that children really, really have to learn how to work in a group. And, that kind of development of the individual want and need. And, I want to do it this way. And if 5 people don't, I still want to do it my way. And I don't understand why I can't do it my way. And I'm just wondering what's your thoughts on that, because it was so evident that, teaching children how to be good winners and getting over bad, that's quite easy. Children seem to get that because they understand empathy. But when it comes to, getting annoyed at their teammates, so, oh, you're being slow and I want to win. They do quite struggle with that, don't they?
Well, I don't think it's a particularly innate ability, to be honest with you, kind of like what you just said there. You do really have to teach the vast majority of people, I think, at some point in their life how to do it. I mean, surely the evidence for that is the fact that we have team building companies for adults. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a huge part of adulthood, team building. There's thousands of companies that make a living off of providing these experiences for literal adults. So yeah, that leads me to the assumption that a lot of people go through childhood and still don't learn that skill, even though we try, and have to sort of hone in on it later on in life. But I agree. I think it's a social skill, and school isn't just about the curriculum, which is something we're going to talk about a lot today. It is also about the social skills and everything else that comes with school as well. It's not just maths and English.
I just think it goes to show the importance of that kind of thing. And, again, this is another thing that's going to segue into our discussion, how you just said. But I just think it's something that, perhaps as staff, we're not as highly trained in as we are in delivering the maths concept or, a phoneme or something like that in English.
Yep.
But I think it's just so important. And it's glaringly obvious. And there's the whole thing around COVID. Certain children of a certain age missed out on reception, year 1, big chunks of year 2. Mm-hmm. Those times where they do start interacting with other children a lot more, even nursery now. We're getting that far away from COVID.
Yeah.
And it is interesting just to see how we're going to plug that gap, because we are obsessed at, and rightly so, with plugging gaps in terms of attainment and education.
Yeah.
Those social gaps, I do sometimes worry.
I think it comes under that band of well-being. I think it does. You're going to feel better in yourself if you do learn to socially interact at an adequate level. And you see those children that can't do it, and they often do struggle. They often do suffer socially because of it, and their happiness might dip because of that. I'm going to do something a bit different, Dylan, because we're going to segue into the next section right now. But before we play the jingle, I'm going to ask you a question. And after the jingle, to make the listeners stick around, for the whole 3 seconds, after the jingle, you're going to come back and ask that question. So here it is. Do you think British culture values well-being?
I know you're all on the edge of your seat after that 2-second wait, and I do have my answer. So thanks, Hayden, for that retention scheme.
Well, what can I say?
Does British culture value well-being? I think because of the fact we've spoken about this before and how polarity makes for good discussion, but bad overall, I'm just going to give a one-word answer. No.
So bring it right to the context of primary school then. Does that change in any way, or were you already thinking of kind of the context of school?
I'm thinking of that classic... Yeah, no. I was thinking I was trying to think straight away of what British culture means to me in terms of that kind of context in general. And the thing I think about immediately is stiff upper lip. That classic British stiff upper lip. If you've got a problem, we put up with it because we're British. And I think, I don't know, this is a very tenuous link, but I'm going to make it because I know you love politics. So very, very, very quickly, Dominic Raab, he resigned over a bullying scandal, basically.
Yeah.
And I think the British culture was on show, like in droves in some of the media. Basically, he was found of being horribly demeaning and bullying his staff and just, completely unacceptable way to behave in the workplace. And the amount of people who came out and said, "Oh, Britain's broken. All these snowflakes can't even put up with someone telling them they're doing their job badly." And I just thought, there you go. There it is. There's
it
that
is.
massive subculture we've got of that generation who think stiff upper lip is an acceptable way to go about life, who think there's literally nothing that anyone can do with words that can emotionally and mentally be a detriment to you. And that if you let that happen, you're the problem. I think that is so widespread with so many people in our culture still. I think it's going to change generation to generation. I think the fact that he was found guilty for bullying shows already that culture is changing, because for sure 30, 40 years ago, no one would have blinked an eyelid at your boss treating you like rubbish.
Yeah,
that was very common. The fact that it's already changing in that respect is good. I think people struggle with that who are older. And I think in general, maybe we can narrow this down now. In general, I think we focus far more on outcome and profit and how useful you are to the economy, for example, in a macro level, way outweighs anything to do with your well-being, for sure.
I think it's really interesting because I don't know, maybe it's just a personal experience. Perhaps people can let us know if they've experienced this as well. But I am worried for the younger generations that those people, you just talked about all those people that showed their true colours with the whole stiff upper lip and snowflakes, can't say anything anymore, can't even get bullied by your boss and get on with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking about? I feel like, and I sound so old now, but there's such a platform for those people now. Like, it's so easy to get into the ears of children through things like TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that sort of stuff, because it's just so easily accessible and it's widely accepted that that's just what you do. Like, honestly, despite the apps being like, usually 13 plus or whatever their age limits are, I have no doubt that 90% of primary school children, by the time they leave primary school, are already using these apps and scrolling through hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of content, and almost definitely coming across videos of people who are usually really confident, ironically, and demand a bit more like, oh yeah, listen to me. And who better to be drawn into listening to these people than young impressionable children who see, oh wow, it's authority, because they're drilled to think that that's what authority is, probably through, I don't know, maybe through the schooling system, just the way it works. And I'm just worried that our youngest generation is going to like revert a little bit in terms of they're going to be a bit like that. They're going to be like, yeah, that's how you do it. Yeah, you got to be stiff upper lip. Now we do, but I'm going to bully someone else because they're weak, because they're snowflakes. I'm really genuinely concerned about that.
It's a widespread problem. Case in point, in the recent months, Andrew Tate. Case in point of Andrew Tate and the influence that he had on children as young as primary school age, because it's the classic problem of, 80% of what he says is all right because he told me to work hard and get my head down and make money, and and how can you argue against that? But then suddenly we slip in some absolute misogynistic bile. But it's all right because young lads, they need someone to get behind, and you're absolutely right. How impressionable! Like, this is again, we're going to go on a million side tangents here, but this is really interesting to me because this is another reason, exactly what you just said, Hayden, is another reason why I'm quite passionate about trying to destroy the whole "because I said so" top-down view of like teaching and control,
the authority
and behavior,
thing,
because.
Right?
Exactly, because actually if we spend if we spend the first 6 years, let's say for a year 6 child, 7 years of their life saying to them, I'm older than you, I'm the teacher, I'm the person in charge, that's why. If that's ever an explanation for doing something, then it's going to breed the kind of problems that we see of confident man on TikTok says climate change is not true. Confident man on TikTok says horrible conspiracy theory as I grow up and eke into politics and go down rabbit holes. We have to also teach our children to listen at really important points, and actually there are certain things where you do just listen, because don't put your hand in fire, because I know I know to explain it right now because you're doing it, so just stop doing that. But equally, when I say to them, actually I need you to stay in to do your homework because you didn't do it, going back to our talk last week, if I can't explain to them why we're doing that, if the answer is just because I said so and it's what you do, I think that long term has a detrimental effect.
Well, me and you have talked about this a lot over the years, and I know it's something we're super, super conscious of. And maybe it's from our own experiences growing up of that frustration. I remember, and I know you do as well, asking the question why a lot. I was that kid, and you were that kid. Why? Why do I have to do that? Your parents or someone older tells you to do something, and you don't understand why, so you ask why. And when the answer is, because I told you, do as you're told. Like, that is an infuriating response. I don't respect that. So as a teacher, I will I hope I don't. But in my head, I never demand respect from the children. Never, ever, ever demand respect from the children. I always go out of my way to earn their respect because they are human beings. It doesn't matter if they're 9 or 10 or 8
Absolutely.
or whatever. I earn their respect. And like you said, I try to show them that my authority in that school is not because I'm the biggest, loudest person in the room. It's because of my credentials, the profession I've built up. It's because I know what I'm doing and I'm there to support them in these ways.
Yeah, and I think there is a line. I think you're absolutely right, because we do, demanding respect, someone might interpret that in a different way. And we do have to demand a certain kind of respect when we walk in because we're there in the first place, right? But it's because of credentials. And I think your idea of, it's not just because I'm loud, it's not just because I'm confident or taller than you or older, it's because I've got these XYZ credentials. And what you said about building relationships, number one advice to any teacher who's just starting out ever is always for me going to be that. Make a bond with them, find some common ground, make sure they like being in your lesson. Like, that should be one of your main goals, not because you want to feel liked or loved by the children, but because you're going to be able to get more out of them using your experience, your professionality. You're going to get more out of each child. I've got a very quick story on the idea of, when parents just tell you because, and it's such a trivial one, but it sums it up perfectly, the kind of child I was, and maybe that's why it influences us. And like you said, and I know my mum listens to this podcast, so she'll remember this story. I made a tub of Angel Delight. Okay, so I made a big plastic tub of Angel Delight, whipped it all up, and what I would do is, it's quite a lot. I know I could probably eat it in one sitting, but I never normally did when I was young. I went through a phase of just loving Angel Delight.
Do now?
And pardon?
You do now?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the fridge still. So I made a big tub of Angel Delight and I had a spoon. I was eating it just out of the tub. Classic student behaviour. I was like probably 70. I don't know. I was a late teens, and I had eaten enough of what I wanted. So I took the bowl with a spoon in, and I put that in the fridge. And the idea was, I'm going to come back to that in half an hour and eat some more of it. And I always remember my mum opened the fridge and she was like, Dylan, why is the spoon in here? And I was just like, what? Because I want to eat something. No, wash the spoon and put it back. And I was just like, why? And she goes, because you don't put spoons in the fridge. And for a lot of people, that might have been the end of the conversation. Like, and I understand it to her. It's like, you don't put spoons in the fridge, so put it out. And I was that annoying kid. I was like, yeah, but why can't I put it in? What's going to happen? The spoon's not going to combust in the fridge. It's not going to crack.
It's not a microwave.
I want to use that spoon. Yeah, I want to use that spoon in 20 minutes when I'm hungry again. And it was just so funny seeing, that the person who's kind of say, just do this thing, kind of realize that other than just doing this thing, there isn't actually a reason for doing this thing. And that's not therefore good enough reason to do it. But I was 16, so I took the spoon out, I'm sure, and I put it back in the cupboard, got it back 20 minutes later. It's just a classic example, isn't it?
When I edit this podcast, I'm going to go from me asking you the question, does British culture value well-being? And I'm going to cut straight to that spoon story and see, that's where we got to. That's where we got. But like
No, we don't.
Bringing it back to that though, that kind of original point of the discussion. What we really want to talk about in this podcast is the curriculum. And
so we talked about well-being for 20 minutes, and we want to talk about the curriculum.
Yeah, well, it's linked. Because. And I will make the link soon. I just don't want to make it too quickly. But we want to talk about the kind of ever-increasing expectations, perhaps, of the curriculum. And it also just gives some of the listeners. We have a lot of listeners that aren't teachers or aren't in the educational world. Thank you for listening, by the way.
Quick story on that, by the way. Got to come in straight away. Because last week, I think you used the word pedagogy 27 times. Mm-hmm. And not once did we tell our listeners what pedagogy was. And I had 5 messages from 5 different people about the fact they didn't know what pedagogy meant. Yeah, so Hayden, what's pedagogy?
Pedagogy is, oh God, how do you define that? It's
actually a Digimon. It's the evolution of pedagogy.
Pedagogy becomes pedagogy. God, that's really hard to define. It's like teaching concepts.
It's different ways of teaching, getting across a point. Different pedagogies.
The way you
might teach in different styles, different ways. I did post a Google definition of it, so if you didn't like that really bad definition of pedagogy, go to Google.
Yeah, you made me realise how hard that is to explain. Anyway, so a lot of people who are listening might not know much about the curriculum, how it actually works at primary schools. You probably think of secondary school being the last place you were, and in primary school. The expectation is, as teachers, that we teach everything. We teach every subject, basically. We have our core subjects, which are maths, English and science. But we do have all of the foundation subjects, which consists of everything else. Geography, history. There are more subjects in secondary that you might start studying, but we do the basics. So history, geography, art, DT, music, modern foreign languages, which is sometimes French or Spanish, depends what school really. What have I missed? Probably missed something really
Computing,
important.
PE.
Computing, yeah, PE. So we've got to teach all of them basically. If you're lucky, you might have a specialist teacher that works at your school and takes maybe one or two of those subjects away. But generally, teachers teach everything. Now, one of the biggest kind of debates or issues, I guess, in primary education is this kind of ever-rising expectation to teach all of this stuff in a timetable that is restricted by time. Like, there's only so much time in a week.
Those darn timetables restricted by time.
God damn it, to teach all these subjects. And it's just a constant problem across the country of, okay, cool, thanks government. When do you want me to do this new thing that I now have to teach you geography? Like, what?
So when you're talking about, so again, we say new thing. A bit of context for everyone. The curriculum does get updated. There was a time when we didn't have a national curriculum.
Yeah.
But the curriculum was last updated in 2013, I believe. It was a year or two before we started teaching. So we've only ever known this curriculum. And basically, we've got to follow this curriculum as a state-funded school. So we've got to follow this curriculum. And like Hayden said, the idea is we've got to fit everything in. Now, Hayden, what I wanted to clarify now is, okay, did you want to kind of center this discussion about well-being? And I suppose there's two routes to go down there. One route would be the well-being of the staff delivering the curriculum. And the other route would be the well-being of the children who are receiving the curriculum.
Sure.
So, where did you want to start?
I think both would be interesting, but maybe we start with the children for this one. I know it'd make more sense to start with the adults, but I kind of want to just root it back to the kind of original point of this. Because when I was saying, do you think British culture values well-being? What I was really getting at here was my actual feeling about this, which is I don't think the British government value, or even maybe understand, they might pretend to value, but I don't think they do, the well-being of children, like our learners. I just don't think they do value that, because I think their response to any problem, for example, league tables, which is just a nightmare. We're always comparing ourselves and also other countries. And when we're not performing as well as another country, I think our government's response to that is, cool, well-being out the window, let's do more.
Absolutely.
Let's just do more. That's the response. What's that? You're only doing 8 hours a day. Clearly, we need to do 9 hours a day then, because they're not learning enough.
It's counterproductive. It was the same narrative after COVID. Obviously COVID created huge gaps rather in children's knowledge, and the curriculum is very intricately designed. Well, for some subjects, as we'll come on to, and missing out certain gaps, especially in maths and also in English in terms of spelling progression and grammar and writing. There was huge hits to them, and we had to do something to fill those gaps. But I always thought straight off the bat that when they said, okay, long booster sessions before or after school, and lengthening the school day, which was a thing that came in. Yeah. I just thought it's just so counterproductive, because the people making these decisions, I just feel half the time, don't have to teach a class after having taught them maths for an hour and 20 minutes, taught them English for an hour and 20 minutes. They've had a short break after eating their lunch, and then had to sit down and do a 2.5 hour lesson in the afternoon. Yeah. I don't think these people, absolutely agree with you, Hayden, are thinking of the children's well-being, because it is a slog, and children should work hard at school, and children should be pushed to achieve their best at school. But there has to be a line. And I think the curriculum, although it's not always changing, I understand what you mean about ever increasing expectations. And that comes down to Ofsted. Every single change ever that I've seen in schools that have been massively driven workload up and added stress and well-being has been via Ofsted and their expectations. And now actually what we need to see is this progression map on paper, please, of these skills, which is important, sure, but it's another thing you've got to do. And then also in geography, by the way, it's another thing you've got to do. And actually, by the way, in PE, we now need to have more PE. There's a huge drive to get 2 hours a week in, because not all schools are doing 2 hours a week. And do you know why not all schools are doing 2 hours of PE a week? Because they literally can't deliver the curriculum that you've set. And it's just this constant tug of war of the government trying to say the right thing in the media, to get the right attention in the mail, to make the old people say, oh yeah, they do deserve the best. How are these teachers not giving our kids the best? And the kids are at a detriment as well. You're absolutely right, not just us.
But Dylan, you're wrong, because Ofsted said very recently, they came out and said in their own report on themselves that that it wasn't negatively affecting well-being of anyone. So we've been getting it wrong. Like, teachers, if you're listening, you're going to feel so silly right now, because Ofsted they told us they haven't been.
Sorry,
it's not them. They've told us
crazy,
because isn't it? I know.
I swear that I felt stressed and overworked. No, clearly I haven't, because they told us.
It wasn't. Yeah, you weren't. You were actually fine the whole time. So Ofsted came out and said, no. And they admitted that the only time that teachers might feel slightly stressed due to as a direct result of Ofsted is when they're actually in the school. So, guys, stiffen that upper lip and crack on with it, all right?
To be honest, I've not even... I don't really hear the word Ofsted or even think about it until they rock up.
No,
so
it definitely doesn't affect anything that a school does.
No. Oh, wait a minute. It affects literally... Oh, okay, yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, it's like the only trickle-down version of anything that works in our country.
Who needs trickle-down economics? We've got trickle-down workload and stress.
That one works. We've proved it works somehow.
The problem is government works in a really weird way in our country, because we get, we've had 8 or 9 education secretaries in like 7 or 8 years. There is no consistent thread. And because the whole, the civil service are the people who are constantly working, and they're just employed. They work in the Department for Education. They'll work on this with ministers to deliver the government's vision. But the ministers and the Department of Education Secretary, the Education Secretary might change frequently. The people actually implementing these changes are just like a consistent group of people. I'd be really interested to find out more about who these people are, because they are at the will of the government at the end, because the government are voted in, and they want to say, okay, actually we're going to make this happen, and then the ministers make the civil service make that happen. But I don't know. I think, and maybe it's a really cynical view of politicians in general, but I can't get over my overriding thought of, I think they say and do exactly what they think will look good, way more than what they think is good. I think from their point of view, being able to release press saying that they've lengthened the school day by half an hour or 45 minutes will not lose them any votes, and it will strengthen their base of people who think teachers are lazy anyway and should work more, and also people who are just like, 45. I've never worked in a school in my life, but I absolutely think that an extra 45 minutes is going to help the children do stuff.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
Well, it's a hard one, because I can understand the logic there, because in a lot of things in life, when you do more, you get more outcome. Like it is like that. So all of us working people, it's like imagine you're a carpenter. It's like, yes, if you did put in an extra hour a day, you would literally make more stuff. That is how it works. But I strongly disagree with the idea that more time at school equals more learning. I don't think it is anywhere near as simple as that. And I think that is hugely backed up by other places around the world. Now, I'm no expert on this, and I know there are other factors. Like, a lot of people often compare with China. I don't know why, but that just seems to be quite a common one to compare with. And people often say, well, in China they do this and they do that. But you do have to take into account like the wider culture as well of people. Like, that does obviously impact hugely how children grow up. Like, it's not just school. Yeah. But there are places that are a bit more close to home, I guess. Like Finland is often quoted, Denmark, the Netherlands, that area, right? Notoriously and famously have the shortest kind of primary school days, like very short days. Some places, I think it was Denmark, have something like as reduced to like 20 hours a week in some cases. I'm not sure that's like consistent for the country, but I've seen reports and things of that. And you just think, wow, okay, that's like wildly different. Finland will have some school days that are like 4 hours long, and that's just like standard. Or they'll start school a bit later. But when it comes to league tables, they continuously outperform most of the world. Like they do really well. And again, we have to consider the idea that, okay, maybe a lot of that is to do with culture as well. Perhaps the culture outside of school also hugely impacts that. But I do find it really interesting.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. And if I'm going to bring it back to England, I don't like being this negative. I actually don't. I really hate moaning or complaining. But I can't help but think that England has the perfect mix of absolute garbage when it comes to our children's well-being. The perfect mix. There's a bit of banana skin in there. There's leftover dinner from yesterday. Yeah. And there's that bottom of the bin juice that's just constantly lingering.
Just as I drink my drink. Thanks for
that. It is absolutely rubbish. Let's just think about it for a minute. Again, we're not experts on this, but it's just so blindly obvious. Think about those countries. They don't go to school until they're about 7, right? They start school at 7. That's year 3 for us. That's year 3. And these countries who are performing as well, if not better than us, are starting school at 7. Here's the horrible, horrible mess. We have some of the most expensive childcare in the world. Children are, from a state's point of view, a burden. They are a burden. If you're thinking of having a child in this day and age, you have to really think about whether you can afford it or not, even if, both of you are in full-time work.
Yep.
If both partners are in full-time work. And it's still a stress because we get a situation in this country, and it's usually predominantly women who want to get back into the workforce, but it doesn't make sense for them to do so because it ends up costing them nearly as much to put their child in daycare as it does to actually go back to work. There's not this staying at home as a parent for numerous reasons of wanting to empower the female workforce more often than not, and also the fact it's unaffordable, is less and less attractive. Okay, it's less and less attractive to stay home and less able for people to do that as much as possible because we have terribly expensive childcare. We just don't have the infrastructure. And when it comes to, I'm thinking of strike days again, there's another strike tomorrow as we record this. So this week when you're listening, that again, the thing straight away is, childcare. And we need a culture change if we're ever going to reach the levels of Finland, where turning around now to the British population and saying, okay, we're going to a 20-hour week for all school children would be impossible. It would be completely impossible.
It's true.
What would happen to work? What would happen, to all those things that cost so much now? Where would the children go? I just think as a culture, we are nowhere near being able to introduce anything like that. And I think the idea of longer days and wraparound care is all linked to getting people back to work. And it's what we said at the start in terms of well-being in this country. You are a cog in the economic wheel. And all the government care about is getting you back into work, getting you working as well as possible, get into these 40, 50-hour weeks. It's fine because we'll nanny your children for a bit from 8 till 4:30. We'll do some extra maths with them. It'll be great. I just think well-being is completely shot, and it's the lowest thing on the rung, lowest thing on the ladder. And the happy living index. There's this index where it takes in everything, and it's basically how happy your country is. These countries that you've just explained are always ranking high, Scandinavian countries, because they put these things first. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And it's another very British thing to be ashamed to say that sometimes. And it's celebrated. He worked 70 hours a week for his whole life, and he deserves a good retirement at 74. and I saw articles the other day of 87-year-old woman still working in shop, and I'm like, cool, there are benefits to that, but the moment that someone who's 87 feels like they have to go to work to survive, our country is broken. So if you're not a teacher, and even if you are, it's good to reflect on this, I suppose. The national curriculum is a document that we work from. It's 200 pages long, the primary national curriculum, so going from years 1 to year 6. Hayden, bit of a pop quiz for you.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah. The teacher standards.
I'm going to read. Yeah. No, you don't have this one up, I hope. I'm going to read to you, just the listeners, and for you to refresh your memory from earlier, every single subject, because I think you got them all earlier, but I'm not sure if you missed one.
Okay.
So in the national curriculum, we have English, maths, science, art and design, computing, DT, geography, history, languages, music, and PE. There are obviously other requirements in there that don't go into much detail, like, schools have to teach RE, but there's not necessarily an exact set of, a curriculum to follow. Basically, each school can decide how they do that. But they're the subjects, they're the lessons. Now, it's a 200-page document. Obviously, there's some preamble, there's some references, etc.
Right.
How many pages out of 200 do you think is dedicated to English, maths, and science.
So the core subjects. Now, obviously, I know it's going to be weighted more towards them. I know it is. So I'm going to go for like a percentage. I reckon. I don't know. I reckon honestly, it's going to be crazy high, even though it's only 3 of 12 subjects. It's going to be like 40% of the document. Or something.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
What is it lower?
175 pages out of 200.
No.
Is dedicated to English, maths, and science.
Is it really that much?
Yeah, just under 90% of the document.
God, I knew it would be a lot.
Maths and science. Yep.
Wow.
So, 175 pages to the most granular of details, to the point where you could pick up year 4 maths, look at the bullet points of the strands, and probably plan lesson by lesson your year. Okay, that's how granular it is for maths. For English, there's progression on all of the spelling rules, all of the grammar and punctuation terms. There's glossaries. There's everything you need to do in terms of the strands for reading. There's everything you need to incorporate into your writing in every single year group. So that's very, very particular as well.
Yep.
Science as well, it tells you exactly what subjects to cover at what time in the curriculum, which isn't as much detail as we go into for other ones, as we'll talk about in a minute. So basically, you can dive into maths, English, and science, and pretty much any school, you kind of know what you're going to get in year 4. There's far less room for wiggle room, basically. You know, we all know what we're doing in those subjects. What I find really fascinating as a flip side of that is, for example, the entire geography curriculum for primary school is on 3 sides of A4.
And that's just primary school is a long time. Let's just reiterate how much of a time span it is as well.
6 years. 6 years of your learning for geography condensed to 3 pages. History, 4 pages. Languages, 2 pages. Music, 2 pages. PE, the PE, by the way, the huge drive to get children active and fit, 2 pages for PE. 4 for D&T, 2 for computing, 2 for art and design.
Wow.
And, you know, I understand, and we know, don't we, Hayden? We teach maths every single day. We teach English every single day. We teach science more than we teach the other subjects. However, that is disproportionate. And when we're thinking about the curriculum we have to deliver, it's a huge workload to interpret that curriculum for subject leaders. And the point I wanted to make, Hayden, and maybe you could elaborate on this and what you think, I think straight away here, in terms of history, has some very specific skills that we need to teach our children that aren't necessarily transferable. You know, interpreting sources, primary sources, secondary sources,
reliability,
thinking historically. Exactly, thinking historically as well, and those strands of, power, invasion, community, very specific to history topics. And then you dip into geography as well, which we're supposed to deliver. And we're supposed to be going through all of the thinking geographically strands, which, using, reading maps, thinking about communities, thinking about their interactions with the physical world and the man-made world. And it's very specific, high-level stuff that we have to be able to master and deliver to our children. And I just can't help but think, just to compare to secondary, I'm not suggesting it's much easier, because a secondary teacher is a specialist in geography, has to know a huge amount in each of the year groups. So I understand from their point of view, but I find it really tricky as a primary school teacher to be able to know so accurately all of those very specific strands and deliver them all, when actually I've got to teach, 12 different subjects across the term.
Well, it reminds me actually of last week's conversation a little bit, where we mentioned the idea of, we were talking about when you're teacher training, and I was saying, just hold back on the subject knowledge, just focus on learning how to teach. And I made that point of you're going to teach 200 different subjects, and we kind of joked about it, but it is true. You are going to teach 200 different units within the 12 subjects across a few years. And I agree with you in terms of, it is a little bit mad, really, isn't it? To I don't know if there is an expectation, but to have any expectation that primary school teachers, are masters of all of these subjects and have that really deep, specific knowledge of everything, because it's a very hard thing to do. And like you said, secondary school teachers, although they have a much wider, subject knowledge base to know off the back of their hand, because they are a specialist in that subject, at least it's one subject that you can really just dive deep into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I suppose my wider point was, there's almost two kind of pools of knowledge as a teacher, right? There is that actual knowledge of, for example, how long is the Nile, and how did communities, live around them, and why was it useful, and why did it encourage, migration, or whatever it is. That specific, factual knowledge still I think it's acceptable to be like, okay, well, you have to just learn that at the time. But very specifically, just the strands of skills that's specific to geography, specific to history, specific to art and design, specific to DT, specific to music, specific to PE. Those strands that go through the whole kind of journey through year 3, year 4, year 5, through different teachers, that's kind of missing in terms of that mastery. Because in a secondary school, if you teach geography to year 7, 8, 9, 10, you could see the kind of progression there of in history how we teach communities and how it gets more complicated and it goes and it moves through. We've kind of got to try and pick that up as like, if I'm a year 4 teacher, I've got to think about how actually they were taught communities with a different teacher last year, how they might be taught it in next year, and make sure the pitch is absolutely right here. And it's and that's where the kind of organisation of the subject leads. We're very lucky in our school. We have amazing subject leaders who put so much time into these amazing documents where we can kind of click on and find out as we're planning. But in terms of just retaining it in our head and being able to naturally do that, and in a way that we can for maths, let's say, or for English, those core subjects where it's so meticulously laid out, I think that idea of giving a school 2 pages for a history curriculum and expecting this beautifully designed, like, coherent thing that works like clockwork, there's a huge gap there in workload that is just expected to happen.
And the idea that Ofsted might scrutinise you on the effectiveness of this, of what you do, and it's like, hang on a minute, sorry, have you seen the document that you gave me? The government, have you seen the document that I was actually given? I think I've done a pretty good job considering the 2 pages that they gave me. This is what I've created from it. Like, give me a break. Do you know what I mean? But in terms of the specialist knowledge, you mentioned English and maths, and I do think, like, if I was to describe a primary school teacher, what's their specialist knowledge? A lot of people, I think, would say, oh, nothing. We teach a bit of everything. I don't think that's true. I think we are really specialised in teaching early maths and English. Core maths, core English, the foundations. That is our specialism. I think that is what we do. But when it comes to the other subjects, it just can't be. You might have an invested interest in 1 or 2 of those subjects, right? And that's a bonus. That's if we can get that. We love those teachers, because if we can get a teacher in that is like super passionate about history, it's like brilliant, because we're gonna draw on that knowledge and that passion. But generally speaking, no, we can't be masters of all of these things. So we need a well-designed curriculum. Thanks, government, for not giving us that, which is why schools will often buy into schemes and things, and stuff changes a lot over the years, because it just isn't doing what you said. Maybe a scheme doesn't provide that really good coherence through the year groups, because it's not going to be the same person teaching it, unlike in secondary school. I don't know what the year 3s are doing in something. If I'm in year 6, I can't kind of tweak my teaching on both of those year groups so it flows better. There has to be a coherence through the scheme that your school's using, so the teachers can just pick up.
And that's where the work of subject leaders is just so invaluable. But it is that it's hours and hours and hours and hours of work. And I just feel like sometimes they've done it for maths. Maths is like about 60 pages of that document. I just feel like we could get a bit more detail, and it would just help us out so much in terms of well-being.
A question for you. Why do you think, given the fact that the curriculum is actually so short for the foundation subjects generally, why do you think we do struggle as a profession so often? And it always seems to have been a problem, like the last 10 years anyway. We're always harping on about how much we struggle to fit everything in. Why do we struggle to fit everything in? Why do you think that is?
I think, although it's 2 pages in the curriculum, it kind of leaves so much stuff open to interpretation. And I think what you've got to match the curriculum up with is various Ofsted frameworks and Ofsted expectations. And I can't unbreak that link. I can't unbreak that link of having worked as a primary school teacher for many years and spoken to many teachers in lots of different schools. This isn't just a personal kind of reflection. It's just a fact as a teacher, being in forums, seeing lots of people. The pressure to deliver all of these things comes from the pressure of what Ofsted will expect to see when they come in. Because there's plenty of things, I think, in the afternoon curriculum where you could probably draw a line much earlier, but it won't be accepted, and schools fear that it won't be accepted. If Ofsted came in and said, right, we're going to deep dive into geography, I think a lot of schools would be very scared. And I think 90% of what happens half the time is kind of cover for when Ofsted come in, as if to say, look, okay, we understand what we just said. We can't have 16 geography specialists. That's impossible. So we have gone out of our way to create 6, 7, 8, 9 documents so that our teachers can click in and see exactly what they did in last year in this exact topic that kind of goes through the whole year group. I think that the problem is well-being. It's just cool. That 2-page document plus Ofsted framework has just created this horrible cycle of just, and I think the other problem is, despite it not being, very, very granular, it is very clear in what you have to do still. It is like, for example, in history, you have to do, a British-based module and a rest of the world-based module, and you have to go into detail about, how invasions happen, how power struggles happened. It does manage to fit a lot into that, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how to do it, and that's where the workload comes in.
Yeah. I've got a theory, right? And it might be a little bit controversial. It is just my opinion, okay? So I'm going to share it with you. I reckon I could fix it. I reckon I could fix it.
Sorry. Stop the phone, guys.
Hey, hang on.
Yeah.
Not in this
Hey,
universe.
sorry, 1 second. Yeah, Rishi. Hi, mate. No. Listen. Strikes, well-being, workload, mate. Hold the phone.
I know, guys.
Hayden Stevens, teach, sleep, repeat, mate. Listen to this episode. Here we go. Ready? I'm just going to play it now. Going to put you on loudspeaker, mate. 1 sec. Off you go.
Hello, Rishi, mate. Listen, I've got a solution. No, in all seriousness, right? I'm just going off on one here, but just hear me out. Don't laugh me out the door straight away. But if I could go to an alternate universe, this can't happen. What I'm about to say just won't ever happen, right? So I can say all I want because no one's ever going to be able to do it, and we can't prove me wrong. But I really do think we do struggle to fit it all in, and I think a huge problem of that is the fact that we have to do, and I say have to do in inverted commas, we have to do so much English and maths, right? It takes up so much of our daily time. And I do think that comes from a few different avenues of pressure. For example, the fact that we are just judged against it. On the teacher level and on a school level, we just are judged on our maths and English results. So of course they're going to get an unfair proportion of how much we do of them. But I truly think if we take the holistic view of children, right, and we think about Finland, the Scandinavian countries, and all the stuff we were talking about earlier, and how that maybe we should value well-being more because we just don't seem to do it, and we don't seem to link well-being to you actually learn more if you're happy, right? I would, if I was in charge, I would massively reduce how much maths and English we teach. I reckon we could still hit the same targets, ironically, of maths and English. I reckon children can still learn the same amount with considerably less lessons on it. And the one phenomenon I've experienced in my career with children is quite often when I'll teach something maybe near the end of a term, and after half term they'll be really solid in that thing, where they've had a bit of consolidation time, where their brains just had an actual moment to just let that sink in, that classic phrase. And I would love to test it out. I wish I could just go and be in charge of my own made up universe and do this. And I'd be like, cool, right, let's massively reduce the amount of maths and English we do. Let's shorten the day a little bit. Let's introduce way more fun stuff that is topic based, centered around the other subjects still, geography, history and all that. But way more of the day are these cool, fun projects. I feel like school for me was a bit more like that, to be honest with you. I think it's changed a lot since I was at school. A little bit less math. You don't have to do maths and English every single day for an hour and a half each. And I don't think you'd see a massive decrease in performance in maths and English. And I think you'd see a huge increase in children enjoying learning, enjoying school, and just their well-being would be better. That's my theory.
It's interesting. Thanks for wasting our time on a pipe dream. I said that as you were drinking in the hope some of you might spit it out, but you controlled that well. No, I've not got much to add to that. I'm not going to go into it. I think it's really interesting. I do think you're onto something. I just look at the curriculum. The only thing I'd add to that to kind of back you up a bit is how the curriculum, since I was at school, and I'm not that old, ladies and gentlemen, has massively dipped down. And what I mean by dipped down is there's genuinely things that I did in year 7 and 8 that we now do in year 4, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Like that is just a fact. The level we aspire to reach to, because governments feel like they have to be doing something to show that we're making progress, we have to reach this by then. Genuinely the stuff in primary school that I never did until secondary school. And it's just not necessary. I'm here. Hello. I nothing changed because I didn't do congruent angles quicker.
Yeah. I think my biggest gripe, and I reckon so many teachers that are listening to this right now are going to be like, yes, because I think this is going to nail it on the head, right? Writing attainment. I think being a year 6 teacher, and it don't have to be a year 6 teacher, just work in a primary school, right? The level in which the bar has become to reach like greater depth, which for anyone listening is kind of like above average, it's like the highest grade you can get in writing by the end of year 6. I'm not joking when I say this. You have to be a perfect writer.
Yeah.
Like you have to be at the level in which you could publish a book and it would come across as an adult. No one would even know. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating that.
No.
People that don't.
I want to add something to that. As two professionals here, and you would agree with me, okay? The greater depth barrier for what we're judging 10-year-olds on is higher, truly, than ever I reached until I became a teacher.
Yep.
And saw what you needed to do to get there. I would never have produced writing that included everything that has to be included to be greater depth. Naturally, I never ever would have done that unless I had the list in front of me, and even then I would struggle to get everything in coherently to make sure it makes sense.
Once I became really confident with the kind of greater depth standard of teaching year 6, I did actually go back and look at some of my old essays and things that I wrote at university. Before I started teacher training, and I thought, because my theory was these aren't going to be as good. The essays I wrote at university level are not going to be as good as, honestly, the expectation that we have for these children. So that for me, and it's true, by the way, they weren't that good. I mean, maybe it was just me, but I got through university just fine. And you just think, Christ. And then I went back, and for a bit of fun with the kids, I found my year 7 books. I still got them all in the loft. I found my year 7 books, and I went to a grammar school, and I had my English books out. And I looked at them with the children and I was like, I was almost a bit embarrassed really, but I just wanted to show them because they were feeling a bit down at this time. They were like really hard on themselves. And I was like, you are doing so amazing. It's not your fault that the bar is like unacceptably high. You're doing so well. Just look at what I did in year 7. And it was rubbish. My punctuation was all over the place. I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I did not write particularly well, but it wasn't as valued then. What I was good at was just being creative. I had really nice creative sentences. They weren't punctuated very well, and they didn't always make like perfect sense. But yeah.
Well, that's what I always had. You've had it as well. That curriculum did move towards more of a, old-fashioned, include this punctuation, that kind of word type. We need to know what an auxiliary verb is, guys, because that's more important than this massively interesting piece of writing you're doing. I need to do a checkbox of this, and this to tick you off. It's It's what it is. This is the problem when politics and education are so entwined. It's always going to be the case that we're going to be at the whim of the government's fancy at the time to prove a point that may be nothing to do with education. It's just a point of, one thing that will always stick to me, maybe we can finish it up very soon. And we've got a couple of stories this week and then we'll finish it up maybe.
Yep.
But one thing that will always stick to me is in the new curriculum when I was at university. So the curriculum was brand new pretty much because I went to university in 2014 or 15 for teaching. And so the curriculum was 1 or 2 years old. They always were saying the new curriculum, which to us was just the curriculum. And one of the lecturers made this point. He was talking about how we're trying to encourage children to be active and to be fit and to move more. It's a big drive, okay? Showed how old school this was. Gove, obviously the education secretary at the time, who, this curriculum was his baby. Very Victorian, very old-fashioned. And it was summed up by this. It was given as an example in one of the documents at the time of a way to discipline a child for doing something wrong was to send them to do laps of the field. In 2013, that was published as a punishment. And the idea was, what are you doing making exercise, running, a punishment? Like, what is that saying, again, from the top down, from power?
You know what they would have thought? His thought would be, gets them moving, though, didn't it? It ticks 2 boxes, 2 birds with 1 stone there, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't even think it was that. I don't even give them that much credit. I think they went, well, I did it when I was at Eton, and we turned out all right, didn't we? No, you didn't, mate, so do one.
Yeah. It's like when you talk to my granddad or something like that, and he'll say things like, "Oh yeah," he'll tell me the same story every time. Oh, I remember getting my knuckles wrapped by a cane, or you see a board rubber like flying across the room and it would hit you in the head. But they don't. But my granddad actually doesn't look back at that fondly. He looks back at that as, thank God it changed because that was dreadful and it made me hate being at school. So I was actually quite relieved to hear that.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, what, being hit around the head?
70 years later, you're still bitter about that. Yeah, it was a terrible experience, wasn't it? It's like it literally caused trauma. Like, it's ridiculous. Of course we need to move away from Go's old school Victorian methods of teaching. What a ridiculous time.
Anyway, Hayden, I've got a couple of stories, so we'll play the jingle and we'll wrap it up, and there's some good ones. So guys, stick around past the jingle.
Wow, guys, you made it. You're back again after through all the ads, the 3 seconds ago. Oh, what's going on? Dylan, what's your stories, mate? Come on, I want to hear some good stuff.
So, I loved it this week. I absolutely loved it this week. Last week, we talked about teacher training. And again, every now and then I ask for stories. Some people will send us some. I didn't even ask for any this week. And we got one of our listeners who messaged us.
How did they message us, again? Dylan?
Oh, funny you should ask that. They messaged us via our Instagram, which is Teach, Sleep, Repeat Podcast. Find us there and send us messages. We love it. But this listener got in touch and it was linked to teacher training because she is training to become a teacher. So I'm going to read this to you, Hayden.
Perfect.
I love these stories. I also love it when people send us stories and have written it in a way that we read it because I can just sit here on my phone and tell you. So I've read this. You haven't. I just loved it. So I'm going to start from the top. Hey guys, I'm a regular listener to your podcast and I'm a teacher in training doing a 3-year-long degree. I absolutely love your podcast and it sheds the reality, both positive and negative, of teaching that they don't prepare you for in universities. I know that these stories are probably a bit too late for the teacher training episode, but I wanted you to have them anyway. I didn't have to read that, but it's really lovely. So I wanted to let everyone know what this person said. It was really nice to read, so thank you. Anyway, the first one. Some background information. So it's public knowledge that my favourite animals are cows. I have a cow print Apple Watch strap and often wear cow print clothing. As a training teacher, I like to ask the children random questions to get to know them. I used to love that part, you know, when you first went into school and you start building relationships for the first time with the class. It's so good. Anyway, she likes to ask them random questions to get to know them, like what's your favourite colour, animals, food. So she's in a year 3 class and there was one child who they were just a bit aware of would be shouty outy and would kind of have no filter.
Yep.
So she was aware of this child, really lovely kid, but just kind of wasn't able to keep thoughts in their head sometimes, which is also always a recipe for a good story. It was also well known that his favourite animals are pigs. So everything he has is pig related. So it's a good combo here of the teacher who has a favourite animal of a cow and he has a pig. Anyway, now I call the children chickens. I refer to the whole class as my flock. I love that kind of stuff. I love that. I have pet names from I used to call them chicken nuggets for a bit and they were just like, what? It was so
I remember
absurd.
when that was the thing. I remember when the kids were obsessed with that.
Yeah, they were just like obsessed with it. So she calls her children chickens and then they're her flock. I don't know why I do it, but the year 3s find it hilarious. Anyway, I was having my observed English lesson with my mentor, my university lecturer. The lesson was going great, and I gave them a think pie share activity. I think this is just where they basically go off and share their ideas. I've never heard of this, so I'd be interested to know what that is exactly. But basically, the children were discussing their thoughts on something they just covered. And all was fine. I regained the children's attention, and obviously, there are a few that are really deep into conversation and just use this opportunity for chat, general chit-chat and chatter. So she begins to say, right, chickens, next we're going to... And that one child that loves pigs blurts out, I'm not a chicken, I'm a pig, and you're a cow!
Oh, no.
Now the whole class is dying with laughter. And she had to tell the class teacher the background context so that she wouldn't just go and tell him.
Cow is like an insult as well, isn't it? Like, you cow. That's
in the middle of an observation. You're a cow.
Oh, God.
Terrible. Oh, my gosh.
That's so funny. I love that. I didn't even think about that until you, even through the story, I was like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, she is a cow. She's a cow. She's got a cow strap on. She's wearing a cow dress.
Yeah, the literal cow. Not...
Wait a minute.
That's brilliant. Love that. Oh, nice. It's so nice to hear someone listening to our podcast and also the fact that they said it's nice to hear the positive and negative things because we do worry sometimes because we do like to moan. Yeah. Everyone loves moaning, right? We love moaning. It's great. But we do also think very highly of the profession as well. So I'm glad someone picked up on that.
I've got another one from her because she sent 2 and I said I'd say them both because they did really make me laugh.
Yeah, sweet.
So this one's more embarrassing for the teacher.
We love embarrassing
but it's
stories.
Just brilliant because I can imagine doing this. So my other story in the placement school is they have this system of behavior basically of give me 5. So when you say give me 5 to the children, they know they have to stop talking, listen, put down whatever's in their hands, pop their hands in the air, 5 different, show me 3 good things, that kind of thing, just to get their attention basically.
Yep.
And so the saying they're saying in the school is give me 5. Now, I had a lesson that went really well, and my mentor quickly just was giving me feedback via the sheet as the children were tidying up at the end of the lesson. Gave me a few points from it, and the children were just getting ready for their next lesson, basically for English. Whilst my class teacher is talking to me and giving me my positive feedback, she says, "Give me 5," and puts her hand up. So I high five her. We both look at each other like, what the hell has just happened? Because she was just saying it to give feedback about the "give me 5."
Oh.
So the kids stop what they're doing and look at us really confused with 2 adults at the front just giving 5. I ended up hiding in the supply cupboard for 10 minutes pretending to read my feedback whilst trying not to laugh or cry with embarrassment.
It's like you in the staff
Give
room.
me 5. Okay.
Oh, that's so awkward. I had a feeling that it was going to be something like that. I was like, "Give me 5." That's really ambiguous if you don't have the context.
Yeah. And I think it was really good how, you said, "Give me 5."
Oh.
Smack.
Ooh, awkward.
And we talked about that before, haven't we? How many times, like early in your career, and especially when you're training and in a school you don't quite know, I spent so much of my time just pretending to do something, because sometimes you do just sit around hello. Oh, I'm just reading my feedback 54 times in a row about my pace needs to improve. Yes, my pace. Yes, pretend to think about it. Pace.
Yeah. Joe, hilariously, give me 5 thing. A very similar thing happened in my class today between 2 children. I couldn't stop giggling for a few minutes afterwards because it was just funny. And it was just as simple as this. We had just played Times Table Shootout, right? And the person that because my class are obsessed, as you know, with this game. Like all they want to do is play this game. I have to let them occasionally. By occasionally, I mean every day, all day. No. And the child walked back to their place, and one of the other kids was really nice. Just went, "Oh, well done," and put his hand up to give a high five to this kid, and they just didn't see. And I was watching from I had the perfect spectator position. I was watching. I was thinking, normally if you go to give high fives to someone and they don't do it within like 2 seconds, firstly you're horribly embarrassed, and secondly you give up. Like you don't. There's nothing worse than lingering. And this kid, bless him, 10 seconds went past and he was like moving around as well, trying to get the attention still, like excitedly of this person, and they just didn't notice. They were like not in the zone. I had to intervene because it was so awkward. I was like, oh, look around, like, oh, there you go, and then made the person notice. I was like, oh, that's nice, isn't it? But like cringing inside at how long he waited.
And the kid was like, "Yeah, no, I saw him. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to touch him. I don't want to give him a high five."
So yeah, I just thought as well, 2 things from that. Those stories really made me crack up. I read them in school, funnily enough, before a meeting. I was in between the end of school and the meeting, and I just saw it pop up. I was just laughing at myself. But also just half the time, when I ask for stories, we get a couple. But the best stories have always come randomly. And it was really nice to hear from that listener that she likes the podcast. So guys, if you do listen, we know you're out there. We know your listeners are out there. I'm the same. When I listen to podcasts, I just listen to them. I'm a huge fan. I don't normally get in touch. But now I do my own podcast. I understand how much it means to them when people get in touch, and especially us with kind of like still like a nicely tight-knit community of listeners. We love reading your stories. So even if you just want to get in touch, just to say hi, stroke our ego a little bit, make us feel good about ourselves, just do it, guys. Just do it. And if you've got any amazing stories, please do send them in, because I know Hayden and I still have loads to tell, and we're still going to spread them. I can probably go for 100 episodes of stories, but we want your ones as well. So yeah, thanks for getting in touch. That was really cool. Guys, thanks for making it this long. We actually started off, Hayden said, before this very episode, let's make it a short one. We just can't do it anymore. We just get too far into it. But another great discussion. Absolutely loved that. And do you know what we've done, guys? I'm going to tell you now, because we always have these loads of ideas for podcasts. We've sat down and we've mapped out the next 12. So we are here for the long haul, guys. We are going to make it happen. 12. Do you know what we've also done? I've also messaged someone about coming onto the podcast for the very first time.
Yeah.
Heard nothing back from them, so it might not be happening.
That's always good. Well, we've got a few others in the pipeline, haven't we? So I haven't heard it from them either.
We've got some ideas.
If we've got no guests, ignore this bit. Just hopefully you didn't listen to this part of the podcast. Right, guys, let's wrap it up. They've had enough of us.
So they've had enough, guys. Do you know what, Hayden?
Yeah.
Listeners?
Yeah.
Customers?
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.